What's going on, you guys? My name is Daniel, and here on this channel, we talk about Canadian stock market investing with a focus in growth stocks. And today we're going to be revisiting CloudMD. As on my previous video, if you want to check that out, it's right up here or here. It's talking about Docebo, but a lot of you commented wanting to know what's up with CloudMD after the stock has dropped about 25% in the past month or so. In my last video, I announced that my brother and I started a new business called a Leave Gun, and we're selling these things called percussion massagers or massage guns. And what they're used for is to help relieve pain or even for warm-up for those of you guys who are gym goers. So all you do is you turn it on with a click of a button, increase the speed to whatever you like, and apply it to the areas of your body that are painful or you're trying to warm up. Essentially what it does is it brings blood flow to the area and relaxes that area of your body. We just finished our Black Friday sale, which gave people $40 off. However, I'm extending that to you, my audience, with a special coupon called FIRE40. You can find those details in the description down below. This massage gun comes with 6 different attachments, as well as a charger and a soft shell carrying case. So you're getting quite a bit of value for about 120 Canadian dollars. Now let's jump into CloudMD stock. First off, we're going to talk about the Q3 earnings because these are very important as to why CloudMD stock saw a tumble recently. After that, we're going to talk a bit about the history of the company and the insider ownership, which I've never talked about on this channel before. And I think that it's very interesting for you guys to know more about the insider ownership and how much the company management owns. This gives us a good insight as to how aligned management is with the shareholders. And lastly, I'm going to do your favorite thing, which is technical analysis on CloudMD stock. And there's a very interesting pattern forming, so stick around till then. So recently on November 30th, CloudMD announced earnings, and this is what they reported. In Q3 2020, CloudMD reported record revenue of $3.4 million, and the recent acquisitions drove up their annualized revenue run rate to $35 million. So this means that CloudMD is expecting to earn about $35 million per year if the business didn't change in the next year. They had significant growth and expansion, announcing 7 acquisitions during the quarter and adding approximately $19 million in revenue. What this really means is that they increased their annualized revenue run rate by more than 50%, as it's sitting at $35 million now, and their 7 acquisitions brought in an extra $19 million, so that's greater than 1/2 of the $35 million. They had a bought deal offering of $20.8 million, and after the quarter ended, they had another bought deal offering of $37.3 million. This brings their current cash position to $60 million, with the addition of their second bought deal offering that they announced after the quarter. I remember when I first talked about this company, the CEO predicted that their annualized revenue run rate would be about $20 to $22 million by the end of the year. However, they smashed that, and now they're at $35 million per year. One thing that was a little bit disappointing was that their gross margins were 42% compared to 46% in Q3 2019. So the gross margins have actually dropped a bit, and this is because they've acquired more clinics, which are lower margin businesses, versus their software solutions as well as their telemedicine platform. Looking at their income statement, again, we can see that revenues rose by 55%. And look at this. Physician fees increased by 120%. And this is probably largely due to the number of acquisitions that they did in the clinic space. And when CloudMD acquires clinics, these are lower margin businesses compared to their software services. Software services usually have a high margin, whereas clinics, you're paying for people's time to help address the clients that come in the door. So you're going to have higher costs there. Moving further down, we can see the cost of goods sold increased only by 28%, which offset the increase of physician fees by 128%, at 120%. But ultimately, this lowered their margins from 46.1% in 2019 Q3 down to 42.1% in 2020 Q3. Their expenses also increased by a whopping 134%, but this is a little bit expected from a growth company like CloudMD, where they're growing their revenues by 55%. And if you guys look at the past quarters in terms of how CloudMD's revenue has increased year over year, we can see that this quarter was a pretty weak quarter. So looking at Finbox, we can see that in the previous quarter, they increased their revenues by 162.8, then 177, 219, almost 400%, and this quarter was 55%. So I think CloudMD's triple-digit revenue growth may be over. unless they spend a lot of their cash to really boost up their acquisitions and increase their annual revenue run rate. If we look at this article featuring Canaccord talking about Q3 results from CloudMD, the summary is it was in the range of expectations. Revenue of $3.4 million was expected versus the consensus, but missed Canaccord's estimate of $3.7 million. The consensus was saying that CloudMD would report around $3.4 million, which is basically the average of all predictions. However, Canaccord had an estimate of $3.7 million, which CloudMD didn't exactly meet that. CloudMD's adjusted EBITDA loss of $1.3 million was slightly better than both the consensus and Canaccord's estimate of negative $1.7 million and negative $1.8 million respectively. So CloudMD's adjusted EBITDA was better than expected, so I would say these earnings reports were a little bit mixed, which is ultimately probably why we saw CloudMD continue selling off after their Q3 earnings. Usually a company like CloudMD should be smashing earnings as a growth company in the telemedicine space where a lot of investors are jumping in for all the hype. So the fact that they missed on some estimates is probably why we saw the stock continue to sell off. One other thing that I've never talked about before, which we're going to talk about right now, is a share ownership. And I think this is a very important factor to take note of if you're an investor in CloudMD. If we look at this chart on simplywall.st, we can see that institutions own about 0.6%, individual insiders own about 2.8%, and the general public owns 96.6%. So clearly there's not much insider ownership of this company, which can be slightly concerning for us as investors because this means that insiders aren't very invested in this business. And I think that as investors, we want to see that there is a large insider ownership because if those people own a lot of stock, then they're going to want the business to do well. If they don't own as much of the stock, then we can see that there's less incentive for them to really drive growth in this company. Maybe they put them in real estate, or maybe they have their own secret shell company where they invest in other companies. It's not very clear as to what management has in terms of their own personal assets and how invested they are in the business, but clearly it doesn't seem like insiders have a huge hold on CloudMD. If we compare this to WELL Health Technologies, it's a different story for WELL Health. We can see that the insiders own about 21.44%, and institutions hold about 7.08%. So WELL Health has a larger insider ownership, which means that management is more aligned with shareholders there, which is ultimately why I'm more bullish on WELL Health. But CloudMD is still an interesting business and they're still growing at 50% rates or possibly higher in the future. If you guys don't know too much about the history of CloudMD, we can jump over to cedar.com and you can have a long read through all the different news releases. But essentially the company started reporting stuff back in 2014. And I read an article saying that CloudMD used to be called Premier Health and maybe a few other name changes before that. They actually started around 2002 and the founder has since left. So CloudMD has quite a long history and that's ultimately why the management doesn't have a huge hold on CloudMD right now because they came in a very late stage. We can see here on August 31st, 2018, Dr. SM Hansa was appointed the CEO of the company. So for him to come in as a CEO in 2018, and the company was founded in 2002, he would need a lot of cash on hand to be able to buy a significant portion of the company. Although the insiders don't own much of CloudMD, the positive sign about this is that they're still buying shares of CloudMD. And we can see here some of the insider transactions in 2020. We can see that the CEO actually bought some shares at a price point of $2.19. Also, Mark Kohler bought a few different batches of shares. He bought about 15,000 shares in the past month or so. And also before that, just after their IPO in July or June, we can see that there's a lot of buying by Mark as well. So this is a good sign that management is still buying the stock rather than selling the stock. Now let's turn over to the charts to see what we can learn. And this is probably one of your most favorite parts of the video. We're going to jump into tradingview.com to look at CloudMD's charts. And right here on the screen, you can see that I left my patterns that I drew in before. All these wedges where the price point came in and it popped up, came in, popped up. And then I predicted there was another wedge here. However, things broke down a bit. And I have a support line drawn here. And it seems like the support line has held quite well for CloudMD at around $2.10. So it's bounced off here, and we almost saw it bounce off today actually. I've also drawn a new pattern here, which is the dotted green line, which signals a flag pattern. So usually preceding the flag, we have the flagpole, which is a pretty huge run up in price. Also during the flagpole, we can see there's a huge spike in volume. And if we look at this pattern here, we can see that there's a bullish volume pattern for the flagpole part, and then there's a bearish volume pattern during the flag period where the volume does decline. So you can see that the volume has dropped during this downwards channel. And if we do break above this channel with a full candle, I expect CloudMD to continue running higher, probably past the previous all-time highs of around $3.40. But again, this is all technical analysis. It doesn't always happen. These are patterns that we can look for as investors and traders as to when to time our entries into certain stocks. But patterns also have to work in line with the business itself. So for CloudMD, because I am bullish on telemedicine in general, and there's good tailwinds for that, I think that this pattern is probably valid for the stock. For me, myself, I bought a few shares at these levels because the stock has dropped quite a bit in this channel pattern, and I think that it's going to bounce off the $2.10 mark and probably see new all-time highs after this. So that's pretty much my prediction for CloudMD, and I think that it possibly could play out in the next couple of weeks because CloudMD is quite a volatile stock, and it is volatile because there's a lot of retail investors in here. As we saw that the general public owns about 96.6% of the shares, and I think that people are selling out of the stock right now because the stock isn't having as much movement, so momentum traders are losing interest and ultimately selling out. But then I think that there's going to be a surge of buyers coming in when they realize, hey, CloudMD is pretty cheap right now. Let's get right in. And when we see a huge number of buyers come in, that's going to bring even more and more buyers back into the stock, trading on that momentum. Let me know your thoughts about CloudMD, what you think about the stock price right now. Are you buying? Are you selling? Are you holding? I'd love to start up a conversation down below in the comments. If you guys enjoyed this video, smash that thumbs up button as it really helps out my channel. And if you guys are new here, subscribe and click that notification bell. I've got 2 videos on the screen here about CloudMD and Well Health. If you're interested in watching those and you're new to my channel and haven't seen them, click on them right now. If you're there, I'll see you there. If not, keep up the grind and have a great day.